So I think a great way to kick things off would be, and Mark, I'm going to kind of just go back in the order. If you want to talk about how you describe or define a social enterprise or affirmative business, and the reason I think that's a good way to kick off things is as we've been trying to do some of our social enterprise affirmative business initiatives, I came to the realization that not everyone has that same definition or understanding. So it'd be very interesting to hear how you all would define that.
Okay, so I'll go first. So I'll tell you why we started it. We have a program. We have 5 staff that help kids find jobs. Okay, they work with dozens of kids, dropped out of high school or just got out of prison. So they're linked to all construction companies, restaurants, and they'll help those kids find jobs. The problem is the federal standard is what percent of your kids found a job and kept a job for 90 days? And we had the best record in Vermont at 41%, which I didn't think was so great. And when I asked the staff, why are so many kids quitting or getting fired within 90 days? They said they don't know how to call out sick. They don't know how to show up on time. They don't know how to speak to a boss. They don't know how to work as part of a team. So I said, well, the few youth who are doing it well, what's in the secret sauce there? And they said a boss who gets who these kids are and knows how to work with them. But most people are trying to run their pizza shop or their construction company. So that's when we came up with the bright idea. Well, we do know how to work with these kids. That's our expertise. Why don't we be the boss? So that was the whole process. So that's what we did. That was the idea. Let's start a business. And in Vermont, they have something called an L3C corporation. So it can be a for-profit business under the umbrella of a nonprofit, which can still accept charitable donations. So even though it's a for-profit business, a cardiac healing business, people can still donate money to it. So anyway, that to me, at least in Vermont, that's what a social enterprise is. It's run by a not-for-profit. It's not a training program. It's a business, and we teach kids how to work. And when it comes back to my time again, I'll tell you like our success rate and what we've learned.
And Michael, do you want to share your take on a social enterprise or affirmative business?
Sure. I think the term that we most often use would be provider operated business. And really what we're trying to do there is to distinguish or set up advocacy that differentiates from what a sheltered workshop is, which has so much negative advocacy and intellectual development disability career field, into businesses that are created by providers, typically not-for-profits, that often do not have very, very profitable margin lines, but do it because the advocacy for this intellectual development of the disability community is not kept up with on the private sector. So finding jobs for people doesn't match the demand on providers. In fact, the advocacy in our career field really is that when you make a business for the point of hiring people with special needs, that's frowned upon, which is bizarre to me, since the employment rate for people with intellectual disabilities is so low. And as Mark said, the things that challenge employers in the community to get on board are the knowledge and skills that we have. And so this becomes fertile preparatory ground to get people ready for those that choose and want to work in the community in an integrated employment setting as well. So we see it as a pathway that may be either a stopping point or a pause for individuals that are continuing that employment journey.
Awesome. And Ellie? Oh, I think you're on.
Unmuted.
There you go.
Yeah. So our affirmative business is really to help people with mental health diagnosis discover work, learn transferable skills, learn work appropriate behaviors while working at a real job, getting paid in a community with other businesses and just gaining all those skills they need to move forward in the future, whether it's education or future employment.
Awesome. So Ellie, can you kind of, I know you talked a little bit about your social enterprise a little already, but can you just go and maybe share about the skills or a little bit more about the
Okay.
specific, how the length of the program and things of that
Okay,
nature?
so the program started out 10 years ago, and we had 14 workers that stayed for a year. And in that year's time, they worked 2 5-hour shifts a week and got paid minimum wage. Now, currently, the minimum wage is increased to $15 an hour. They still get their 2 shifts, but only for the first month. The first month, our workers work in the store for 2 5-hour shifts, and after the second month and the third month, they move on to working at the bookstore 1 day a week, and then they work with a employment specialist for the second day, which they do get paid. It's at another location. They travel there and they do job search, interviewing skills, job retention skills. If they want educational resources or need educational resources, then this employment specialist works with them to gain the skills they need for further or future employment or to reach any goals they might have. And the whole program is 3 months now rather than a year, because we have to serve 54 people, which is part of our contract, and that's the only way we can stay operating and open for our funding source. We have to meet those goals and numbers.
Awesome. And I know that we're going to get into funding in a little bit. So, and Michael, do you want to kind of share? I know you touched that you have several social enterprises or provider operated businesses. Is there one that you want to highlight or kind of just talk about how those are run?
Okay, sorry about that. We can continue with the story of our cafe and drive-through, since it's our latest model business. It is on a commuter line, a direct commuter line into downtown Chicago from northern Chicago and the northern suburbs. So it's a really good traffic location that can draw some of that early morning coffee seekers into the shop. And so the individuals that we serve that are working there, they're working alongside employees from the community, under management, under manager from the community, and they do a variety of tasks. They have back of the house jobs that are food preparatory, and then they have the front of the house, so individuals can work the cash register or work drink machines. We have one gentleman who's going to be training toward getting the barista certification, maintaining the front, and also kind of being the social connection to the community. It's taken off really well. This place has been very busy since it's opened, and so again, this is we're moving to provide an operated business model to get away from the stigmas associated with more the shelter work kind of label that we came from. We still believe that there's a place for that for individuals, but we're not winning that advocacy for. So this is the great thing about this is it's providing work opportunities for individuals in a short of being in a competitive integrated employment setting, the closest thing possible. And it is very integrated because they're working with the public and also workers without disabilities. But it also leaves more individuals behind that maybe can't work at that productivity level or skill level that's needed to operate that business. So that's the consequence of this the advocacy.
Awesome. And Mark?
So what we do is we have young people who are most of them are in our programs. They may live we have a shelter. We have a 16-bed shelter and a 10-bed warming shelter for homeless kids. And our workers, if our jobs workers thinks, they will say, we have this detail shop, and they work a half a day, because most of the rest of the day they're in school, or they have mental health meetings, or they may have AA meetings or NA meetings to attend. So we use a curriculum called, we have on staff a general manager, and then we have a youth coach on staff. If you or I were going to run a car detailing business, we wouldn't have a youth coach on staff. So that's the extra cost. But he does a whole curriculum. We heard about it from a seminar we were at called Bring Your A Game to Work. So he works with these kids on the curriculum. So I mean, so this is what I'm proud about. In fact, we were actually on the Gayle King show in December on CBS News. They sent a crew up and filmed us because when we put kids in regular jobs, like as I said before, about 41% make it to 3 months. When they work at our detail shop, 86% of the kids make it to 3 months. And then we track them after they leave there and the jobs they get after there. And it's something like 90 to 95% stay in those jobs. In fact, one of them is going to be my boss next year. He's going to join our board of directors. He used to be a homeless youth, lived in our shelter a few years, and then he worked at Detail Works. Now he has a job at a daycare center. So I'll be reporting to him next January. So anyway, we're very happy how the model works. I go up once a year and I kick the adults out and I meet with the kids and I'm like, all right, I'm the big boss at Spectrum, what's good, what's bad, and universally, like they say, like you can make a mistake here and you just don't get fired right away. They encourage us here. It's not like a regular place where you work. In fact, one of the kids said to me, he kind of whispered, he said, to tell the staff here to be a little tougher on us, okay? Tell them to be a little tougher. So it's a job. It's not a training program. So it's funny, the two men who work there, they're both former corrections officers. They worked in a Vermont prison. I'm usually a little dubious because the culture in a prison, isn't usually, but these guys are awesome. And these kids absolutely love these guys, and that's really and they teach them and they encourage them and they coach them. And we have a third adult who used to be a youth. A couple of years ago was a youth, and now we have hired him on as paid. So we have a combination of paid workers and then 5 or 6 kids in the morning and then 5 or 6 kids in the afternoon. And we are packed, like we're booked through the month of June. If we had a bigger space, we'd be able to do more cars. So even though there were other detailing shops, being on the Gayle King show helped a lot too. So the business is doing as well as I could have possibly expected.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, I think this is work, having panels like this. We created a social enterprise directory. We're trying to kind of, get that. It's just another way that you can support the kind of community initiatives, right? So that's why we're trying to do this work. So in talking to all of you, I think funding is a little bit different between just even the 3 of you. I know in speaking to Ellie that, it seems like it is all from one grant. So I'd love, and Ellie, if you want to start off, but kind of just sharing if it's strictly around the grant or if you're able to get private donations. And that stuff would be awesome. And then Michael and Mark, if you could share as well.
Well, the majority of our funding is from the Department of Mental Health and Hygiene, and we're in a contract with them with the affirmative business. But we also do get funding from other sources. We get funding from the mayor's office, New York, and we get lots of donations from different local vendors and banks, and we have fundraising events. We're a large mental health agency, and the money gets split between the different programs that the mental health agency has. But certainly we get a lot of funding just for the bookstore, the program, from the parents, from people that like what we do within the community, and local businesses as well.
And do you feel that, at least just in our conversation, that because it is a contract from DMH, that it is that you have a lot of kind of regulatory requirements that you need to adhere to?
Absolutely. We have looked at, seeing if we could run independently, but with the rents around here, we are also, like Michael said, in a prime location with a Long Island Railroad that takes you into Manhattan, just a few feet away from us, and restaurants and very commercial area. So the rents around here are quite high. We're in a very tiny space. We've looked at ways that we could be self-sufficient and just probably couldn't afford to pay the rent, so we do need the funding source. But with the funding source, we also do get help, and we get resources for job leads, workforce, educational opportunities. So it's hard with the paperwork and the regulations, but it's also good that we have the support system.
Yeah. And Michael, can you share your experience?
Yeah, so Misericordia, we have Misericordia, the provider service side, and then we have a Misericordia Foundation, which is our development arm of our identity. And so the Misericordia Foundation was very effective at raising funds from a variety of sources, including personal, corporate, seeking out applicable grants that like legislative discretionary grants. We do not get money to fund, like direct money from government to operate the business, because again, like the emphasis is about getting people just in community employment. That's mostly what people want to talk about. We do have limited capacity to bill for certain individuals under a small, for the staff supervision component of the, which essentially is one person in the business that's working with the residents to be able to bill for a small group employment for those individuals. Once we get it certified, which we're still in that process since this is so new. So it's a little, we have to operate our business successfully. It has to be profitable, be self-sustaining, because we can't, to get it operating and buy the initial cost, not lay to be able to use foundation money to raise it, to get it started, but then we have to be able to operate it in a means that it can be self-sustaining and to be able to continue to allow us to kind of work then on the next venture.
Sure. So with ours, so many groups approach me and they're like, we're a nonprofit, we're gonna start a business just like you. Maybe it won't be car detailing and it'll be a coffee shop or whatever. And all those profits it makes are gonna go into, our domestic violence shelter. And I'm like, listen, that rarely happens. I went to a national seminar before we started even thinking about this. And they said, if your revenue produces 50% of your operating costs, you're actually doing pretty good. So it's don't go into it because we're going to make money and it's going to, fund the deficit in our other programs, So we get some Department of Labor money. It was good that the governor came to the ribbon cutting, because suddenly Department of Labor started paying the salary costs of the youth, which is good. And then there's the revenue from people who have their cars done, and then it's philanthropy. There, especially business people there's certain business, they love this whole thing, teaching kids how to work. So, those three, so the Department of Labor, the revenue from people getting their cars detailed, and then philanthropy they make it up. So, but, we've talked about doing other ones, but it's very, very hard to even break even when you have a nonprofit, especially if it's a population of people who are struggling with, other issues like addictions or mental health concerns. Very hard.
Yeah, and Mark, can you kind of talk about some challenges? I know it seems just even the starting of a social enterprise, but any challenges that you had with starting it that you can share, or even challenges that you're facing today? And maybe how you're trying to address those.
We did just about everything wrong the first year. Everything you could do wrong went wrong. We hired the wrong general manager. We had the wrong location. We were charging the wrong prices. Just about every single thing we could do to screw it up. And that was after we had a business plan. We had a local Chamber of Commerce group came to our aid and developed the whole business plan and did, I mean, we just didn't wing it. We really had this group that helped us. And then 2 other women who were marketing executives who we offered to pay, they wouldn't be paid. They helped us with the marketing, and so even all that preparation, but so much of it is you got to have the right people. We didn't have the right 2 adults to start off with, so, and then we had the wrong space. So, it was hard, but I had to demote the person who was general manager. He eventually quit. I didn't like doing that. I felt bad, but I could see the business wasn't going to succeed. And then the other person left, and we hired these 2 new people, and they've both worked out great. And we found a better location with cheaper rent and more space, so that worked out well too. So it's just, it's hard not. But, God, you read the history of Microsoft or the history of, almost every business that succeeded had a rough launch. So it only makes sense that a nonprofit that's not used to running a for-profit business would have but we persevered and it paid off,
And are you facing any kind of current challenges? I know you said that you could have bigger space, but is that for demand to get revenue? Is that to serve more kids, or kind of both?
We would love to have bigger space. The staff, when I met with the staff recently, the kids, they all said, if we had bigger space, we could have more cars in here, and we're sharing the space with some other auto place. But commercial space is expensive, and then we have something called Act 250 in Vermont, which takes years. Where's the water going to go? You use a lot of water when you're cleaning car, So I'm like, guys, we just got to make the best of it. So we haven't had a problem. Everybody in America is looking for workers. So we haven't had a problem with that. We not only get our own youth who we're working with who might be homeless, but a lot of schools also. Kids, who are struggling in school, or they're looking for alternative ways, kids are having difficulties. So school guidance counselors will refer youth to us also. So we have a number of different ways to get youth. But I would say, I have bigger visions. I want to do mobile car detailing. There's a new electric plane factory about a mile from us, and they want us to bring a van over, and they'll pay us to wash their planes and all their employees' cars. And then there's 3 hotels in town that have said, hey, we'll give you the water, we'll give you the space. You come in here, and every person staying in the hotel will get a little flyer under the door. Hey, while you're staying here in beautiful Burlington, Spectrum, which works with homeless youth, will clean your car for X stuff. So, there's a lot of ways we could go. Boat, we're right on Lake Champlain. People who own boats have money, and they love to clean the boats. So there's a lot of ways we could grow this business rather than go into a whole different business.
Yeah. And Michael, can you just share some challenges that you all have faced?
Well, we certainly currently are facing challenges. I'm sure many providers that are attending this do, and like COVID has been very disruptive, especially when we just launched the business, and then it's knocking out rotation like almost immediately. And I think going off of Mark's earlier remark that we're all in our roles because we're good caregivers and providers, but none of us are really coming necessarily from the business world. I know that some people from the business world may transition to providers, but so we have all these great ideas and all that, but I know just enough about business to get myself into trouble in terms of starting new ventures and things. And so I think with this go around, this business, they found a very experienced barista coffee shop manager to be able to run it. We actually found one before, and then that person went on us just like just before we were supposed to open, and it delayed us another like several months before we could find another person. But the challenge there then is that they got the business side down, but they're also then not acclimated to be working with people with disabilities side. And so they're kind of learning our culture and some of the things that naturally occur within our culture, and we're learning through them about how to appropriately run a coffee restaurant business. And then, of course, the workforce, right, labor shortage is just, I mean, it definitely delayed us probably about 6 months in opening because we just couldn't get the core management team even for the business hired that was the right fit. So kind of slow to start, but we got rolling on it. So.
Awesome. And Ellie?
Well, some of our challenges have been COVID and also size. Our store is very tiny and we're like the size of a half a nail salon. Very long and narrow with a little children's section in the back. And I'm working from the basement where we have our overstock. We utilize every inch of space, but because of COVID and our regulations, we have to limit the amount of customers in the store as well as the amount of workers and staff. So everyone's on a rotating basis, rotating shifts. For a while, we were short-staffed and we didn't have an employment specialist, so the assistant manager and myself were taking on those roles as well, while limiting how many hours we were open. Right now, we're back to 7 days a week, and from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturday and Sunday 10 to 3 and 10 to 4. But we do limit how many workers can work at a shift. Because of, again, the size and social distancing, we still have to adhere to those guidelines that our provider sends us. Mask wearing is mandated in our store. And yeah, those are challenges. But our customers mainly abide by them. Our workers have to. Everyone that works here has to be vaccinated, 2 vaccines. And yeah, those are challenges, but we're working through them.
Awesome. And so on a little bit of a brighter note, can you share some success stories or kind of, I look at this and you're in the community, all of you, and are there stories of kind of, does it help break down the stigma around the individuals that you serve? Is it helping just to have visibility around just your organization itself? Or I know that Mark shared some specific improvement in employment for the individuals, but any success stories that you could share would be awesome.
Well, the biggest success story is our assistant manager. So she started out about 10 years ago when we first opened, and she was a worker, and she had been homeless, and she started out in a youth shelter, Covenant House, and she got moved to Monica House, which is a temporary shelter through Catholic Charities, and then she was in our mental health agency. We didn't have pros back then, but she was in groups and she heard about the affirmative business that was going to open. And we interviewed her, asked her if she wanted to work. She had some work experience and she had a little bit of college and was eager. So when she started working with us, she lacked confidence, appropriate communication skills. She could be moody and emotional, but she learned fast and she was able to multitask, help her fellow workers, and she just was a great worker. She initially accepted a position. She transitioned out after a year to a temporary position at a children's clothing store. She didn't like it. She didn't know it was temporary. She soon left there, but then the assistant manager job became available at the bookstore, and we asked her if she wanted to interview for it, and she accepted it, and she's been with us ever since. And her journey has evolved, and she has her own housing right now. She's just so valuable to our team. She's a crucial member. She speaks at fundraisers about what she's gone through. She's a full-time employee, and she's also a certified peer. Her journey has come full circle, and she is just our biggest success.
Yeah, and I'm sure as other individuals are going through the program, her conversations, I'm sure, are so impactful to say, like, I went through this program and all of that. I can only imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Michael, can you just share some success stories with the initiatives or the social enterprises that you've created?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, we use all of our day services and what we call more like micro enterprises and then to provide operated businesses to again help individuals to move along that employment pathway towards more and more integrated work settings, whatever, or to, their level, corporate level of employment that they seek. And at the height of before COVID, we're maintaining 107 of our people we serve holding community employment opportunity, competitive wages in the community. And when COVID came, it was all wiped out. And so since November, we've been bringing people back into work, with all these spikes and such, and we already have 50 people back to work. But seeing the growth of individuals moving through that, there's so many success stories, and you talk about those moments where, what the impact that it makes and the fondness and appreciation and support shown from community workers in community employment settings that just totally bond to individuals with intellectual disabilities and nurture them, bring them along. That's much more the norm than the work setting where it's an oppositional defiant setting. All of that can happen. One of the unique stories to this coffee bakery is that two of our very best, I work on this new job development with Letter Centennial. It's a big Chicago restaurateur organization, great opportunity. And two of our very best workers, I was lining up for interviews for them. Both of them had started working in the cafe because their employers' business models changed after COVID. And we're like, hey, here's a job for you. This is gonna be great. You're a great employer, blah, blah, blah. You want to do the interview? They'd be excited to meet you. And they wanted to stay. They chose to stay in our coffee bakery because they got to be able to work with some of their friends too. And they were already bonded to the employees from the community that were all kind of started at the same time while our folks were doing training, and they're all inspired by the Misericordia story and working at Misericordia, a provider-based business, and they just didn't want to leave that relational. And to me, that choice doesn't work one way; it works always. And so for a person to want to choose to take that setting and to feel so at peace and enjoying their job that much, that's their definition of success. And so, we embrace that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've been to your cafe, so I think that the community integration is definitely there, right? Like that is people, they're getting that interaction from the individuals, even if it is, like you're saying, technically not, a business out in the community.
Yeah, no, it's advocacy for employment with people with intellectual disabilities is a lot of it is a case of good intentions and adverse consequences. And like one of the, we have a group that works with Chicago White Sox. They employ 26 of our residents. And by one definition of advocacy, that it's not considered integrated employment because any employment situation where two or more people from a common provider travel in a common vehicle to a common employer is by definition inherently segregated. But here they are working directly with the White Sox staff and doing greeting into the park and organizing, being a part of the supporting the children running the bases on the field, and yet it's considered inherently segregating. So we as a career field, we have to open up more to situations, not be so rigid into this mindset. Our career field had a long way to go and still has a much further way to go, but we can't be so short of that. We cut out opportunities where they exist until the business community is fully ready to embrace the entire range of individuals with intellectual disabilities.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And Mark, you've shared some success stories, but do you have any other that you'd like to share?
Yeah, there was a young woman we had, and she started as living in our shelter. She was a youth. She worked at Detail Works. got her own apartment, and then came back as like an adult working for us, and then managed to get a job. I forget if it was Mitsubishi or Mazda, but working there at the local Mazda dealership, and they would pay for her training to be a mechanic for free. So that was like that was like a model of, of what we wanted to see, We don't specifically, if kids want to stay in the auto industry or if they want to work in, we're really teaching them how to work anywhere. But that was really encouraging to see someone, got at that point, because if you can get that kind of training as a mechanic, you can really make a very nice living for yourself.
Yeah. And then, so being a technology vendor, data plays we are very big into data. And I just kind of wanted to see if it's data that pushes, or I know there's a lot of anecdotal success that we just talked about. And I know, Mark, you shared kind of the retention rate for 9 days, we don't each need to go. I'm just going to kind of open this up to all three of you on how you kind of determine success for these type of opportunities. And whether that's for the business, whether that's for the organization or for the individual, or any and all of that.
Well, with our business, success can be looked in different ways. It can be looked at that we're meeting our contractual obligations so we can get the funding to keep it going. And then you can just look at it on a case-by-case basis, what the participant leaves with. Do they leave with a social outlet, with job experience, with self-confidence? What have they gained? Why they worked at this program? And a lot of our stories aren't, them finding the perfect job, but finding that self-confidence and that motivation to move forward, to go for their other goals, future goals, and just realizing that they can succeed, they can work, they can be accepted within the community. Those are all successes.
I'm not managing my mute button well. We use data to track our effectiveness of, we set goals for employment, like our measure is percentage of individuals that have a higher moderate need and or want for competitive employment to have a regular weekly employment opportunity. So to really get to a measure, and then we set our strategic marks, and before COVID, we got up to about 85% of those individuals, which is pretty darn good, as opposed to like looking at our total percentage, like for 600 individuals, our number would be much smaller. But there's so many individuals for who employment is not a choice, not they're not in that level of higher, even moderate need for employment. But we also in the intellectual disability community really shifting towards like this discovery model, where you're really measuring outcomes off of the success of matching individuals to their life goals and interests and wants, and pursuing either through approximation and progress towards obtaining some of those goals. So we're getting into using Foothold to how to monitor and track, keeping up with all year long everyone's new discovery outcomes from their independent service coordinator. So the independent coordinator kind of interprets, it works with the person, so it's unbiased in terms of what their discovery outcomes are, and then we're tasked to do implementation. So where we really are embracing this concept of discovery. So there's definitely a number factor, but it's in our career field, the numbers help to validate to an extent the more of the qualitative story for the individual. So I think it's a case of qualitative and quantitative, really both need to be taken.
Yeah. And Mark, do you have anything additional to share? Or,
kids start when they get promotions. I remember seeing some girl in our waiting room one day, and she said, "I got a promotion at Detail Works. I've never got a promotion at anything in my entire life." So they get different levels. So we measure that, you know, and you get an increase in pay. And of course, there's the longevity, you know, and how many find a job after they leave us. And then, you know, we look at the business, how many cars we're doing, how much revenue we're generating, you know, so we look at that too. So we're pretty data driven. We didn't used to be a data driven nonprofit. We finally hired a data person for our organization. So we have all kinds of metrics now on DetailWorks and all of our other programs too.
Awesome. So the last question that I'm going to see if anyone in our participants have any questions, and feel free again to use the Q&A feature. And while we're seeing if anyone has any questions, does anyone have just any final thoughts in terms of if an organization is thinking about embarking on a social enterprise or a provider-owned operated business or affirmative business, what words of advice would you give them, or final thoughts?
In the intellectual disability spectrum, it's, you know, it's sad to me that providers that do step out and they do this, and again, like Mark said, if you find, you know, meet a margin or whatever, you're lucky. So often providers are doing this at a cost, and that's unfortunate. And that's what's really kind of pushing this need to move for a provider operator business mindset, that we can act profitably, because our businesses, you know, really struggle. And so, but it also then again reduces opportunity. So it's difficult. It's obviously extremely rewarding to see your individuals, especially if they haven't had opportunities to work, at that pride that they have with getting a paycheck, and the coming to work and being excited every day for that. It's such a rewarding feeling for the providers, that I think what draws most of us in our career field, because at heart we're all human service workers more than you know, business folks or whatever. Although they're lovely people too. So the advice is, I just really know what you're getting into. I agree with Mark. If you're looking for to offset your program deficits because of you know, inadequate funding, which is often the case, make sure you would just definitely do your research, because you need to, I think, that first and foremost that this is the right thing to do.
So I would say when we first started to even think of this, there's a national group, I think it's called the Social Enterprise Alliance. And I heard about them, and they had a national conference. Now, probably with COVID, they haven't had in a few years. But I took 3 board members and 3 staff, and we went to it. It was in Denver. And it was like 3 days, and we learned so much. We met so many different nonprofits running social enterprises. Then we took field trips. You know, we saw a bike repair shop in Denver, a mattress recycling place where men coming out of prisons would recycle these. We saw and we just learned a lot. So if you're able to do, and then also tap your local business talent. Like this group in Denver got the University of Denver Masters in Business Administration program to like take on their project and develop the business plan. And we got the local Chamber of Commerce to give us people. So, you know, we got some of the best, and they were totally into it. You know, we saved ourselves probably 6 to 9 months of planning by having these business people help us and advise us. So that would be my advice.
My advice would be just to reach out to other affirmative businesses that are successful, network, get as much information as you can before you venture into it. That's it.
Awesome. Well, we're almost about the hour, so we don't have any questions. So I want to thank all of our panelists for the amazing conversation.